enlighten us in transcendental knowledge, which may act as a torchlight by which we may cross the dark nescience of material existence. Every one of us should pray like this. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The Prachetas requested Narada to enlighten them in transcendental knowledge. Generally, when a common man meets a saintly person, he wishes to get some material benediction. However, the Prachetas were not interested in material benefit, for they had enjoyed all this sufficiently. Nor did they want the fulfillment of their material desires. They were simply interested in crossing the ocean of crossing the ocean of nescience, meaning ignorance. Everyone should be interested in getting out of these material clutches. Everyone should approach a saintly person in order to be enlightened in this connection. One should not bother a saintly person to get blessings for material enjoyment. Generally, householders receive saintly persons to get their blessings, but their real aim is to become happy in the material world. Asking such material benedictions is not recommended in the Shastras. Okay. Text 8. Maitreya Uvacha iti prachetasam Christo Bhagavan Narado Muni Bhagavat Uttama Sloka Avistat Ma Bravin Ripan. The great sage Maitreya continued, my dear Vidura, being thus petitioned by the Prachetas, the supreme devotee Narada, who is always absorbed in thoughts of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, began to reply, Haribol. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In this verse, Bhagavan Narada, Bhagavan Narada indicates that Narada is always absorbed in thoughts of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Bhagavati Uttama Sloka Avista Ma. Narada has no other business than thinking of Krishna, talking of Krishna, and preaching about Krishna. Therefore, he is sometimes called Bhagavan. Bhagavan means one who possesses all opulences. When a person possesses Bhagavan within his heart, he is also sometimes called Bhagavan. Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur said, Shakshat Darit Vena Samasta Shastrai. In every Shastra, the Supreme Master is accepted directly as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Shastras are books or books of philosophy. So it says, in every Shastra, the spiritual master is accepted directly as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This does not mean that the spiritual master or a saintly person like Narada has actually become the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But he is accepted in this way because he possesses the Supreme Personality of Godhead within his heart constantly. As described here Avistatma, when one is simply absorbed in the thought of Krishna, one is also called Bhagavan. Bhagavan possesses all opulence. If one possesses Bhagavan within his heart always, does he not automatically possess all opulence also? That is called a rhetorical statement. A rhetorical statement is a statement that uh, validates a point in the form of a question. If one possesses Bhagavan within his heart, does he not automatically possess all opulence also? Well, obviously, the question is yes. And so that's an obvious uh, answer to the question. In that sense, a great devotee like Narada can be called Bhagavan. However, we cannot tolerate when a rascal or impostor is called Bhagavan. One must possess either all opulences or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Bhagavan, who possesses all opulences. So that last sentence is very interesting. It says, one must possess either all opulences or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Bhagavan, who possesses all opulences. Okay, so we should not be a rascal or impostor and accept to be named Bhagavan. But one must possess either all opulences or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Bhagavan, who possesses all opulences. Okay. So we have a possibility of possessing all occupances. Text 9. The great sage Narada said, when a living entity is born to engage in the devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the Supreme Controller, his birth, all his fruitive activities, his lifespan, his mind, and his words are all factually perfect. Well, I would like to be perfect. You would like to be perfect. Everyone wants to be perfect. And here is the formula. Anyone who is born to engage in the devotional service of the Lord or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the Supreme Controller, his birth, all his fruitive activities, his lifespan, his mind, and his words are all factually perfect. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In this verse, the word Nrinam is very important. There are many other births besides human birth, but Narada Muni is herein especially speaking of human birth. Among human beings, there are different types of men. Of these, those who are advanced in spiritual consciousness or Krishna consciousness are called Aryans. Among Aryans, one who engages in the devotional service of the Lord is most successful in life. The word Nrinam indicates that the lower animals are not expected to engage in the devotional service of the Lord. Well, that makes sense. But in perfect human society, everyone should engage in the devotional service of the Lord. Yeah, that's if you want to be considered a genuine devotee. It does not matter whether one is born poor or rich, black or white. There may be so many material distinctions for one who takes birth in human society. Yeah. But everyone should engage in the Lord's devotional service. At the present moment, civilized nations have given up God consciousness, unfortunately, for economic development. Yeah, they're always talking about economic development and not Krishna conscious development. They are actually no longer interested in advancing in God consciousness. Formerly, their forefathers were engaged in executing religious principles. Whether one is Hindu, Muslim, Buddhist, Jewish, or whatever, everyone has some religious institution. Real religion, however, means becoming God conscious. It is particularly mentioned herein that birth is successful if an interest in Krishna consciousness is taken. Haribol. Activity is successful if it results in serving the Lord. Philosophical speculation or mental speculation is successful when engaged in understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The senses are worth possessing when engaged in the service of the Lord. Actually, devotional service means engaging the senses in the service of the Lord. At the present moment, our senses are not purified. Therefore, our senses are engaged in the service of society, friendship, and love, politics, sociology, and so on. However, when the senses are engaged in the service of the Lord, one attains bhakti, or devotional service. In the next verse, these matters are more clearly explained. When one great devotee of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saw the Lord, he said that all his desires were fulfilled. He said, "Today, everything is auspicious. Today, my birthplace and neighborhood are completely glorified. Today, my senses, from my eyes down to my toes, are fortunate. Today, my life is successful because I have been able to see the lotus feet that are worshipped by the goddess of fortune." Haribol. That is an exciting statement to see the ecstasy of a devotee who takes complete shelter of the Lord and who sees the lotus feet that are worshipped by the goddess of fortune. Haribol. Text 10. A civilized human being has three kinds of births. The first birth is by a pure father and mother. And this birth is called birth by semen. The next birth takes place when one is initiated by the spiritual master. And this birth is called Savitra. The third birth, called Yajnika, takes place when one is given the opportunity to worship Lord Vishnu. Despite the opportunities for attaining such births, even if one gets the lifespan of a demigod. If one does not actually engage in the service of the Lord, everything is useless. Similarly, one's activities may be mundane or spiritual, but they are useless if they are not meant for satisfying the Lord. Wow, very nice. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The word sukra, janma, means taking birth by seminal discharge. Animals from the sukra janma, let's see, 1 second. Animals can take their birth in this way too. However, a human being can be reformed from the sukra janma, in other words, taking birth by seminal discharge, as recommended in the Vedic civilization. Before birth takes place, or before father and mother unite, there is a ceremony called Garbhadana Samskara, which must be adopted. This Garbhadana Samskara is especially recommended for higher castes, especially the Brahmana caste. It is said in the Shastras that if the Garbhadana Samskara is not practiced among the higher castes, the entire family becomes Sudra. It is also stated that in this age of Kali, everyone is Sudra due to the absence of the Garbhadana Samskara. This is the Vedic system. According to Pancharatrika system, however, even though everyone is a Sudra due to the absence of the Garbhadana Samskara, if a person has but a little tendency to become Krishna conscious, he should be given the chance to elevate himself to the transcendental platform of devotional service. Our Krishna consciousness movement adopts this Pancharatrika Vidhi as advised by Srila Sanatana Goswami, who says, Yata Kanchanatam Yati comes Syam Rasa Vidanata Tata Diksha Vidana Nena Dvijatam Jayate Rinam. As bell metal, when mixed with mercury, is transformed to gold. A person, even though not golden pure, can be transformed into a Brahmana or Dvija, meaning a twice-born person. That means that they're initiated. 1 second. Initiated by a bona fide spiritual master. Simply by the initiation process. Hari Bhakti Vilasa 2.12. That statement is made. Thus, if one is initiated by a proper person, he can be accepted as twice born immediately. So that means firstborn is your mundane being, the mundane birth that you have. But twice born means that you are initiated by a bona fide spiritual master. That's your second birth. In our Krishna consciousness movement, we therefore offer the student his first initiation and allow him to chant Hare Krishna mantra, Mahamantra. By chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, regularly and following the regulative principles, one becomes qualified to be initiated as a Brahmana, because unless one is a qualified Brahmana, he cannot be allowed to worship Lord Krishna. This is called Yajnika Janma. In our Krishna consciousness society, unless one is twice initiated, first by chanting Hare Krishna, and second by the Gayatri mantra, he is not allowed to enter the kitchen or deity room to execute duties. However, when one is elevated to the platform on which he can worship the deity, his previous birth does not matter. Chandalo pi dvija shresto Hari Bhakti Parayana Hari Bhakti Vihinascha Dvijo pi swa Pachadama. Even if one is born in a family of chandalas, that means dog eaters, the lowest of the lowest, if one engages in the devotional service of the Lord, he becomes the best of Brahmanas. But even a Brahmana who is devoid of devotional service is on the level of the lowest dog eater. If a person is advanced in devotional service, it does not matter whether he was born in a Chandala family, he becomes purified, as Sri Harivilas Maharaj said. Okay, so what did he say? Viprad Dvisad Guna Yutad Aravinda Nava Padaravinda Vimuk Kachat Sham Varistam. Srimad Bhagavatam 7.9.10. Even if one is a Brahmana and is qualified with all the Brahminical qualifications, he is considered degraded if he is averse to worshiping the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, there are Brahmanas who are not really interested in serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They have the Brahmana thread, but they don't have the Brahmana, let's say, qualification. Yeah, because the Brahmana thread, and it costs maybe, 10 paisa or something like that. Anybody can have the Brahmana thread. But have the Brahmana qualification, that's another thing. But if a person attached to the service of the Lord, but if a person is attached to the service of the Lord, he becomes glorified even if he is born in a Chandala family. Well, I was born in a Chandala family. Indeed, such a Chandala can deliver not only himself, but all his family predecessors. Yeah. Without devotional service, even a proud Brahmana cannot deliver himself. And what to speak of his family? In many instances in the Shastras, in many instances in the Shastras, it is seen that even a Brahmana has become Kshatriya, Vaishya, Sudra, Malecha, or non-Brahmana. Happens a lot, unfortunately. And there are many instances of one's becoming born a Kshatriya, or Vaishya, or even lower. And in the 18th year, attaining elevation to the Brahminical platform by the process of initiation. Therefore, Narada Muni says, yes, okay, it's very interesting. It says in the 18th year. That means that we should not really initiate children to become a Brahmana. We should wait until they are more, let's say, able to understand what it means so that they can follow the regulative principles strictly. So here it says, and there are many instances of one's being born a Kshatriya or a Vaishya or even lower, and in the 18th year, attaining elevation to the Brahminical platform by the process of initiation. Okay, so it's good to not initiate a young child. A young child should be initiated. A young child should be engaged in devotional service, but initiated later on when they can understand what it actually means to be initiated. Right? Yeah. Go ahead.
So Maharaj, is it referring to the second initiation or even first as well for the age of 18?
Usually, second initiation is the real initiation. Yeah. And it's usually done later on, you know, older. If you initiate a kid, you say you're a Brahmana, and they're only like, 5 years old or 10 years old, they might not really understand what it means. But I mean, they can be devotees, they can be initiated in chanting Hare Krishna, but to be initiated and to become a Brahmana, uh, one needs to wait until they're older. But in the meantime, they can be initiated, first initiation. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yasya ya lakshanam proktam pumso varna viv yan jakam yad anyat chapi drishyeta tat tenaiva venir diset venir diset. Bhagavatam 7:11-35. It is not a fact that because one is born in a Brahmana family, he is automatically a Brahmana. He has a better chance to become a Brahmana, but unless he meets all the Brahminical qualifications, he cannot be accepted as such. On the other hand, if the Brahminical qualifications are found in the person of a Sudra, he should immediately be accepted as a Brahmana. To substantiate this, there are many quotations from the Bhagavatam, Mahabharata, Bharadvaja Samhita, and the Pancharatra, as well as many other scriptures. As far as the duration of life of the demigods, concerning Lord Brahma, it is said, Sahasra Yuga Paryantam Ahar Yad Brahmano Vidu Ratrim Yuga Sahasrantam Teho Ratra Vido Jana, Srimad Bhagavad Gita 8.17. The duration of one day of Brahma is 1,000 times greater than 4 yugas. The duration of one day of Brahma is 1,000 times greater than the 4 yugas, aggregating for 4,320,000 years. Similarly, Brahma's one night. Brahma lives for 100 years of such days and nights. The word vibud hayusa indicates that even if one gets a long lifespan, his lifespan is useless if he is not a devotee. A living entity is the eternal servitor of the Supreme Person. And unless he comes to the platform of devotional service, his lifespan, good birth, glorious activities, and everything else are null and void. So, uh, the word vibudha yusa indicates that even if one gets a long lifespan, his lifespan is useless if he is not a devotee. A living entity is the eternal servitor of the Supreme Lord. And unless he comes to the platform of devotional service, his lifespan, good birth, glorious activities, and everything else are null and void. Okay. That's why it's important to become a devotee and follow all the rules and regulations of Krishna consciousness sincerely in order to be qualified as a bona fide devotee and brahmana. Text 11. Without devotional service, what is the meaning of severe austerities? That's a nice statement. Without devotional service, what is the meaning of severe austerities? The process of hearing, the power of speech, the power of mental speculation, elevated intelligence, strength, and the power of the senses. So this is what you would call a rhetorical statement, which means the answer to a question is in the statement. So he's saying, without devotional service, what is the meaning of severe austerities, the process of hearing, the power of speech, the power of mental speculation, elevated intelligence, strength, and the power of the senses? So it's asking the question, but it's also answering the question. In other words, the answer to the question is that one must engage in devotional service. Otherwise, the meaning of uh, doing severe austerities and the process of hearing, the power of speech, the power of mental speculation, elevated intelligence, strength, and the power of the senses is basically useless without devotional service. Purport from the Upanishads, Mundaka Upanishad 3.2.3, we learn Nayamatma Pravarchanena Labhyo Na Medaya Na Bahuna Shrutena Yam Evaisha Vrinute Tena Labhyas Tasyaisa Atma Vrinute Tanam Swam. Our relationship with the Supreme Lord is never advanced by simple study of the Vedas. Let me read that again. Our relationship with the Supreme Lord is never advanced by simple study of the Vedas. There are many Mayavadi sannyasis fully engaged in studying the Vedas, Vedanta Sutra, and Upanishads, but unfortunately, they cannot grasp the real essence of the knowledge. The real essence of knowledge. In other words, they do not know the Supreme Personality of Godhead. What then is the use in studying all the Vedas if one cannot grasp the essence of the Vedas, Krishna? The Lord confirms in Bhagavad Gita 15:15, Vedashta sarve aham eva vedya. By all the Vedas, I am to be known. So people can go through life knowing many different shastras and reciting all kinds of mantras and seemingly to be very educated in spiritual uh, knowledge and still not become genuine devotees, unfortunately. Why? Because they have personal desires and they're not so interested in completely surrendering to Krishna. There are many religious systems wherein penances and austerities are greatly stressed. But at the end, no one understands Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There is therefore no point in such penance or tapasya. If one has actually approached the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he does not need to undergo severe austerities. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is understood through the process of devotional service. In the ninth chapter of Bhagavad Gita, devotional service is explained as Rajaguyam. Rajaguyam means the uh, king of knowledge. Give me a second. This page. Yeah, it says the king of all confidential knowledge. There are many good reciters of Vedic literatures, and they recite works such as the Ramayana, the Srimad Bhagavatam, and Bhagavad Gita. Sometimes these professional readers manifest very good scholarship and exhibit word jugglery. Unfortunately, they are never devotees, wow, of the Supreme Lord. Consequently, they cannot impress upon the audience the real essence of knowledge, Krishna. There are many also, I'm sorry, there are also many thoughtful writers and creative philosophers. But despite all their learning, if they cannot approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they are simply useless mental speculators. There are many sharply intelligent people in this material world, and they discover so many things for sense gratification. They also analytically study all the material elements. But despite their expert knowledge and expert scientific analysis of the whole cosmic manifestation, their endeavors are useless because they cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As far as our senses are concerned, there are many animals, both beasts and birds, who are very expert in exercising their senses more keenly than human beings, more expertly than human beings. For example, vultures or hawks can go very high in the sky, but they can see a small body on the ground very clearly, like at least 1 or 2 miles away. This means that their eyesight is so keen that they can find an edible or eatable corpse from a great distance. Certainly, their eyesight is much keener than human beings, but this does not mean that their existence is more important than that of a human being. Similarly, dogs can smell many things from a far distance. Many fish can understand by the power of sound that an enemy is coming. All these examples are described in Srimad Bhagavatam. If one's senses cannot help him to attain the highest perfection of life, realization of the Supreme, they are all useless. Okay, so the real goal of human life is realization of who is the Supreme Personality Godhead, and that Supreme Personality Godhead is Krishna. Text 12. The transcendental practices that do not ultimately help one realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead are useless, even though they're transcendental practices. Be they mystic yoga practices or the analytical study of matter, severe austerity, or the acceptance of sannyasa, or the study of Vedic literature. All these may be very important aspects of spiritual advancement, but unless one understands the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, all these processes are useless. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya 24.109, it is said, Bhakti vina kevala jnane, mukti nahi haya, bhakti sadhana kare ye, prapta brahma laya. Okay. Impersonalists do not take the devotional service, but take to other practices, such as the analytical study of the material elements. The discrimination between matter and spirit, and the mystic yoga system. These are beneficial only insofar as they are complementary to devotional service. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu therefore told Sanatana Goswami that without a touch of devotional service, jnana, yoga, and Sankhya philosophy cannot give one the desired results. The impersonalists wish to merge into the Supreme Brahman. However, merging into the Supreme Brahman also requires a touch of devotional service. The absolute truth is realized in three phases: impersonal Brahman, Paramatma, and the Supreme Personality of God. All these require a touch of devotional service. Sometimes it is actually seen that these Mayavadis also chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, although their motive is to merge into the Brahman effulgence of the Absolute. The yogis also at times take to chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, but their purpose is different than that of the bhaktas. In all processes, karma, jnana, and yoga, bhakti is required. That is the purport of this verse. And what is this verse? This is Canto 4, Chapter 31, Text 12. Transcendental practices that do not ultimately help one realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead are useless. Be they mystic yoga practices, or the analytical study of matter, or severe austerities, or the acceptance of sannyasa, or the study of Vedic literature. All these may be very important aspects of spiritual advancement, but unless one understands the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, all these processes are useless. Wow. Haribol. In other words, wasting time. Okay, text 13. Factually, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the original source of all self-realization. Consequently, the goal of all auspicious activities, karma, jnana, yoga, and bhakti, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The living entity is the marginal energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the material world is the external energy. The marginal means they're in the middle. And the material world is the external energy. Under the circumstances, one must understand that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is factually the original source of both matter and spirit. Very important statement. This is explained in the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, 7.4-5. Bhumir apo nalo vayu kammano buddha evacha ahankara ityame bina pakritir astada aparayam itastvanyam pakritim vidime param shiva bhutam mahabaho yadam daryate jagat. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and the false ego. Altogether, these 8 comprise my separated material energies. But besides this inferior nature, O Almighty Armed Arjuna, there is a superior energy of mine, which consists of all living entities who are struggling with material nature and are sustaining the universe. The entire cosmic manifestation is but a combination of matter and spirit. The spiritual part is the living entity, and these living entities are described as prakriti, or energy. The living entity is never described as Purusha, the supreme person. Therefore, to identify the living entity with the Supreme Lord is simply ignorance. Well, that's what the Mayavadis do, though. Not the devotees, of course. Devotees always remain humble and meek and surrendered to the Lord, whereas the Mayavadis think they attain perfection by mantras and calling each other God. The living entity is the marginal potency of the Supreme Lord. Although there is factually no difference between the energy and the energetic, the duty of the living entity is to understand his real identity. When he does, Krishna gives him all the facilities to come to the platform of devotional service. That is the perfection of life. This is indicated in the Vedic Upanishad. Yam evaisya vrinute tena lavyas tasyaisa atma vrinute tanam swam. Lord Krishna confirms this in Bhagavad Gita 10.10. Tesam satatayuktanam vajatam pratipurvakam tatame buddhi yogam tam yenamam upayantate. To those who are constantly devoted and worship me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. The conclusion is that one must come to the platform of Bhakti Yoga, even though one may begin with Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, or Ashtanga Yoga. Unless one comes to the platform of Bhakti Yoga, self-realization or realization of the absolute truth cannot be achieved. So Bhakti Yoga means devotional service to the Lord, regulated devotional service to the Lord. Text 14. As pouring water on the root of a tree energizes the trunk, branches, twigs, everything else. And as supplying food to the stomach enlivens the senses and limbs of the body. Simply worshiping the Supreme Personality of Godhead through devotional service automatically satisfies the demigods who are parts of that Supreme Personality. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Sometimes people ask why this Krishna consciousness movement simply advocates worship of Krishna to the exclusion of the demigods. The answer is given in this verse. The example of pouring water on the root of a tree is very appropriate. In Bhagavad Gita 15.1, it is said, Urdhva Mulam Ada Sakam. The cosmic manifestation has expanded downward, and the root is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As the Lord confirms in Bhagavad Gita 10.8, Aham Sarvasya Prabhava. I am the source of all spiritual and material worlds. That is Bhagavad Gita 10.8. So this phrase is definitely very, very profound and should be memorized by devotees. Aham sarvasya prabhava, matak sarvam pravartate, iti matva bhajante mam, udabhava samanvita. Right? This should be memorized because it says everything about the position of the devotee. And it says that Krishna is saying, I am the source of all spiritual and material worlds. Krishna is the root of everything. Therefore, rendering service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, or Krishna Seva, means automatically serving all demigods. So we don't have to worship the demigods. That's what's being said here. By worshiping Krishna, all the demigods are satisfied. Sometimes it is argued that karma and jnana require a mixture of bhakti in order to be successfully executed. And sometimes it is argued that bhakti also requires karma and jnana for its successful termination. The fact is, however, that although karma and jnana cannot be successful without bhakti, the fact is, however, that although karma and jnana cannot be successful without bhakti, bhakti does not require the help of karma and jnana. Actually, as described by Sri Rupa Goswami, Anya Vilasita Sunyam Jnana Karmani Anavritam. Pure devotional service should not be contaminated by the touch of karma and jnana. Modern society is involved in various types of philanthropic works, humanitarian works, and so on. But people do not know that these activities will never be successful unless Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is brought into the center. One may ask what harm there is in worshiping Krishna and the different parts of his body, the demigods. And the answer is also given in this verse. The point is that by supplying food to the stomach, the indriyas, the senses, are automatically satisfied. If one tries to feed his eyes or ears independently, the result is only havoc. Simply by supplying food to the stomach, we satisfy all the senses. It is neither necessary nor feasible to render separate service to the individual senses. The conclusion is that serving Krishna, Krishna Seva, everything is complete, as confirmed in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya 22.62, Krishna Bhakti Kaila Sarva Karma Krita Haya. If one is engaged in the devotional service of the Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, everything is automatically accomplished. So you don't have to do anything else. You only should be engaged in the service of the Lord, the devotional service of the Lord. Then the Supreme Personality of Godhead is automatically accomplished. Haribol. So don't waste your time doing this yoga, or this boga, or that boga. Just be engaged in the devotional service of the Lord, and you will attain all perfection in Krishna consciousness. That's why it says, if one is engaged in the devotional service of the Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, everything is automatically accomplished. There you go. Everything is automatically accomplished if you're engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. Okay, that is our takeaway for today. Krishna Bhakti Kailasarva Karma Kritahaya. If one is engaged in the devotional service of the Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, everything is automatically accomplished. Okay, so there is our takeaway for today. We should be always engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. We don't have to do anything else. And therefore, by that sincere and pure devotional service of the Lord, everything is automatically accomplished. Haribol, Haribol, Haribol. Okay, so are there any questions anyone would like to ask or comments? We don't deny any comments, or we don't look down on comments. Comments are realizations that devotees have by hearing the lecture itself. So, any comments? Yes, Prabhu.
So, question, Maharaj. So, Maharaj, when I had started learning about Krishna consciousness, so this was the biggest change, like worshipping directly Krishna, and that will cover all the demigod worship. and it took me many years to gradually stopping the demigod service and gradually taking up the Krishna consciousness.
Yeah, oftentimes the family says, "What are you doing? You have to do this. You have to do that." They think you're committing some kind of a terrible, in let's say, terrible rejection of the demigods. But no, if you please Krishna, you please all the demigods also. Go ahead.
My question, I have observed some of the very good devotees, they are following Krishna consciousness maybe more than a decade or maybe couple decades, but still they worship some of the demigods, still they are worshipping. So what, like what is, like in general, what is stopping them? Like what is stopping them to taking fully on Krishna consciousness?
Lack of knowledge. If you worship Krishna, all the demigods will be satisfied. They are still uh, materially interested. So when you worship a demigod, you might be benefacted or you might make uh, a better, let's say, material sense gratification, right? So some devotees are attracted to that sense gratification, but that is not Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is uniquely worshiping Krishna and Krishna's devotees. Uh, that means that you're not really worshiping to have sense gratification. You're simply worshiping to have more service. There's a big difference between the two. So until we give up all desire for sense gratification and take up completely the desire for service of Krishna and Krishna's devotees, we will always be missing the real purpose of Krishna consciousness. Yeah. Okay, I think we'll stop right there unless there are other questions or comments. Any questions or comments of today's lecture?
No questions yet. No.
Well, our takeaway for today is Srimad Bhagavad Gita 10.8, which says in the purport to Canto 4, Chapter 31, text number 14. It says, Aham sarvasya prabhava. Aham sarvasya prabhava. Mata sarvam pavartate iti matpa, and so forth. It says, I am the source of all spiritual and material worlds. In other words, Krishna is the root of everything. Therefore, rendering service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna or Krishna's Seva means automatically serving all the demigods. Well, there it is. You don't have to engage in pleasing all the hundreds and millions of demigods. You simply have to please Krishna, and all the demigods are satisfied. Also, it says, sometimes it is argued that karma and jnana require a mixture of bhakti in order to be successfully executed. And sometimes it is argued that bhakti also requires karma and jnana for its successful termination. The fact is, however, that although karma and jnana cannot be successful without bhakti, bhakti does not require the help of karma and jnana. Actually, as described by Srila Rupa Goswami, Anya Vilasita Sunyam Jnana Karmadi Anavritam Pure devotional service should not be contaminated by the touch of karma and jnana. Modern society is involved in various types of philanthropic works, humanitarian works, and so on. But people do not know that these activities will never be successful unless Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is brought into the center. Yeah, there's so much what you would call so much philanthropic work that's being done. But Krishna is not in the center of it. It's all about, serving the body and making it more comfortable or making it more happy or whatever, but nothing about Krishna. So that's basically a waste of time. Okay, so our takeaway for today. It is neither necessary or feasible to render separate service to the individual senses. The conclusion is that by serving Krishna or Krishna Seva, everything is complete, as confirmed in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila 22.62. Krishna Bhakti Kaiva Sarva Karma Kritahaya. If one is engaged in devotional service of the Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, everything is automatically accomplished. Okay. Krishna Bhakti Kaiva Sarva Karma Kritahaya. That is our takeaway for today. This is something that we should memorize. Krishna Bhakti Kaiva Sarva Karma Kritahaya. If one is engaged in the devotional service of the Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, everything is automatically accomplished. So that should be our takeaway for today and forever. To be always engaged in the pure devotional service of the Lord. Then all other desires, purposes, etc., will be satisfied also. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, my dear devotees. Please chant Hare Krishna and be happy. And don't worry about anything, because Krishna is guaranteeing to protect you if you are sincerely chanting his holy names.
That gives a lot of confidence.
Yeah. Krishna Bhakti Kaiva Sarva Karma Kritahaya. If one is engaged in the devotional service of the Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, everything is automatically accomplished. Okay, so let's continue our devotional service today and every day. Haribol. Thank you very much, my dear devotees. Please chant Hare Krishna and be happy, and understand that the conclusion is that by serving Krishna or Krishna Seva, everything is complete, as confirmed in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya 22.62. Krishna Bhakti Kaiva Sarva Karma Kritahaya. If one is engaged in the devotional service of the Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, everything is automatically accomplished. Haribol. Thank you very much, Srila Prabhupada, for your wonderful purports. Thank you very much, Krishna, for sending Srila Prabhupada to this miserable world to enlighten us and give us a chance to be Krishna conscious. All right, Hare Krishna.